You were the leader of the oppressed group, and then all of a sudden, you're the leader of the liberated group. Tell me about the transition that had to take place in your mind when all of a sudden you went from one day being the leader of the people that were being murdered, slaughtered, 1 million, and killed like that, and then all of a sudden you're leading the liberation. How did your change in thinking have to take place, and what changed in your actions?
Well, it takes a long time. First, it is the life that I personally lived and many others lived before the liberation process. And there was desire to correct what we thought was wrong. And in that process, you are thinking of what needs to be done, or what you need to do, or what your responsibilities are to move from what you think is wrong and that you have lived under the oppression. Then you want to fully have responsibility in bringing about what is right for people, not only for yourself, the person that has suffered the injustice, but also what affects others as well, including making sure that even those who did wrong to you do not have to suffer the same when you have assumed that responsibility. You rather want to create a distinction, make a difference between
end it.
That, yes, and end what is wrong and put in place what is right.
One of the things that impressed me when the first time we met, and I asked you to tell me your story, and as you led the RPF back in to liberate the country and to end the genocide when people were being slaughtered right and left, you did not allow your troops to do revenge killings. Now let me put this in perspective. Let's say you're a soldier and you come into the community and your whole family has been killed. 27, 28 members of your family's killed. Your mother is laying there on the floor writhing in pain. There's the guy who did it and you've got the gun. What are you going to do? And I know you told me we believe in the rule of law. We're not going. Somebody's got to stop the madness. You've got to end it. How did you handle two things? How did you handle your natural desire, everybody's natural desire, to get revenge? And how did you confront the victim's natural desire to want to get revenge in a whole nation that had been victimized?
It starts from trying to understand really what is at play here and what the issues are. And there are two things one has to do. One is to communicate directly and try to reason with the people on any side and make sure that people understand it. At the same time, we put in place mechanisms to make sure that once there is a crossing of a certain line, then some actions have got to be taken so that you don't have another chaos.
So you don't have a second genocide.
Absolutely.
Too. Yeah.
And so there was constant communication to our people, to the fighters, at the same time to the victims, that if people carried out revenge, it will only continue to be a cycle of violence. So, and in the end, we won't bring this matter to an end. We will only see revenge,
just the latest cycle,
creating another, leading to another revenge, and so on and so forth. Yet the intention here was to bring about a situation to return some sense of sanity so that you have where to start building from. So this communication and making sure that the message...
So you're telling them constantly, don't do this, don't do this.
Day and night.
Now, as you could see the tide turning and you're in control, yes, you're telling them no retaliation.
Yes, and as you talk to them, as you communicate with them, and fortunately there are others in the leadership who also understand and they are doing the same. You also make sure that you are insisting on creating the rule of law, so that if certain lines are crossed, then the law has to apply to bring back to that situation where we don't see a cycle of revenge.
Now, I know you deeply believe in the rule of law. The other thing that really impressed me about the way you handled the genocide was not just that you refused to let your troops retaliate, but once you had liberated the country, rather than immediately assuming the presidency, you brought the opposition back and reinstalled them as president, the vice president. I've never seen that done anywhere before. Anywhere you liberate a country, you're it. That's called a coup. Okay? And you are in charge. And I had never seen anybody after a war, except General Washington in our own country, refuse the presidency at the start. What were you thinking?
First, my thinking was, all along, I was into this. I was in the struggle. Later on, led that struggle. Not really because I wanted to be president.
Yeah, you weren't in it for the presidency.
I wasn't looking for that. I was just struggling to restore my rights and the rights of my people and the rights of all Rwandese. So it wasn't about me fighting to be president. In fact, I wanted that point also to be properly understood. In fact, at the beginning, during the negotiations, we had the peace process.
Yeah, Arusha.
Just before Arusha process, just before the genocide.
Yeah.
As we reached the conclusion of the peace process, and there was a sharing of power, positions, and so on. When I was asked, both by my own party, the Rwandese Patriotic Front, and in fact, the government then was interested in understanding the position I would be taking at the time, because I was the commander of the forces and the vice president of the RPF, the political wing. And I told them I actually didn't need to become anything, that I would be interested in having the RPF leadership, the others reintegrated in the government, and for me, I would not mind if I didn't get any position. So that created a bit of confusion, because the government started accusing us, saying, this Kagame is thinking of something else.
They didn't understand humility.
They didn't understand. And probably thought I was, seeking to create...
right, a division or whatever.
Yes, or cause another war of some kind. But that was not true. I really meant that if we could have peace in Rwanda, if we could have RPF, the Rwandese Patriotic Front, integrated in the government and so on, I would be happy, and I didn't need to have any position. And that's the position I was operating from even at the time when we took power.
Even before,
Yes. In fact, within the RPF, it was almost taken for granted that I would automatically become the president.